It was a morning in early winter when she came to the village. She came on foot, along the shore road from the north. Michael's cabin was the first one on the road, and he was stoking the morning fire when he was startled by a banging at his door. He got up and was just reaching for the latch when the door opened, and she came in. She was hunched over with her arms tied across her chest. She walked past him without speaking, barely glancing at him, sat down cross-legged in front of the fire. Michael closed the door and stood looking at her for a moment, frozen by surprise. Then he saw that she was shivering, so he got a blanket from his bed and put it over her shoulders. Her clothes were strange, bright with colors he'd never seen in any fabric. They were also too thin to be any protection against the cold. He squatted beside her. "My name is Michael," he said quietly, and after a moment she turned her head to look at him. She had a strong face, with high cheekbones and a wide jaw. Her skin was brown. When she looked at him, her eyes darted over his face as if she was searching for something. "You speak English," she said, "or something like it." She made a short, unhappy smile. "What place is this?" She had a strange accent, and it took Michael a moment to understand what she had said. "This is our village on the inner coast of the Cape. My name is Michael. I'm a carpenter, and you're in my home." "What Cape?" she asked. The big Cape," he stammered. "The one on the ocean." "The big Cape, the one on the ocean," the woman repeated. Then she turned back to the fire and pulled the blanket closer around herself. "Fuck," she said. Michael waited a little while, then asked, "Are you from far away?" He realized then that he could smell the ocean in her hair and on her clothes. "Were you on a boat?" he asked. "Did it sink?" "Yes." "Something like that?" "We crashed into the ocean. Only a few of us got out of the lander before it sank. No one else could make the swim. I spent all day going up and down the shore calling, looking for them, but there was no one. Then it got dark and I started walking. All of them. Only 78 of us were left. Now they're all dead. Philip, Zhang, Gabriella, Mary, Lester, all dead. All dead. All dead." Her head dropped as she said these last words. Soon Michael saw she was asleep. He moved closer to her, then picked her up with one arm at her back and one behind her knees. She made a soft grunting sound when he lifted her, but didn't wake up. He laid her in his bed, putting 2 heavy blankets over her and pulling them up to her neck. Then he left the cabin, closing the door quietly behind him. He was back a few minutes later with Susan, who was the old woman of the village. "She's not like anyone I've ever seen," Susan whispered as they stood over the sleeping stranger. "I've seen brown skin before, but not on a person with such straight black hair. What color are her eyes?" "Brown," Michael said. "Light brown. Almost exactly the color of her skin. And large, like a child's eyes." "Are they now?" Susan said, drawing out the words and smiling at Michael. "She looks about your age, Michael, and very healthy. Perhaps the sea has sent her to you in return for your poor Emma." Michael looked at Susan, one eyebrow arched. "I know," she said. "You don't believe in that sort of thing. And neither do I, come to think of it. But it sounds nice. As I get older, I'm learning to find comfort in things I don't believe." The woman slept until past midday. Then she appeared at the doorway to the half of the cabin that was Michael's workshop. "Could I have some water?" she asked. "And maybe something to eat?" "Of course," Michael said. He came quickly out of his shop and poured water from a pitcher into a mug, handing it to her. He asked her to sit at his small table and began assembling a meal. "My name is Callie," the woman said as she sat down. Michael brought her bread, cheese, a bowl of thick soup. As Callie ate, she gestured at her surroundings. "Looks like 2 people live here." Michael sat down across from Callie. "I had a wife. She died last year." Callie picked up the clay mug of water in front of her and looked into it. "From what? Do you know? Typhoid? Dysentery? Consumption? Evil spirits?" "She had a pain in her chest. In the end, she couldn't breathe. Susan, our medicine woman, couldn't help her." "Must not have been evil spirits, then," Callie said. Then she glanced up, meeting Michael's eyes briefly. "I'm sorry." She drank from the mug, then looked at it, turning it in her hand. "Where was this made? Your clothes, the fabric they're made from, the tools you work with. Where do all these things come from?" "My cups and dishes were made by a potter named Jim. A woman named Anne is a weaver and seamstress. She made most of my clothes, my tools, the fiber for the cloth, the cotton or whatever it is," Callie interrupted. "Is it grown nearby or does it come from somewhere else?" "Traders. It's brought by traders." "Itinerant traders? People from outside your village?" "Yes." "And where do the traders get it? Where is it grown?" Michael lifted his hands with his palms up. "It comes from far away, outside the village. Sometimes the traders come on the road from the south. Other times they have boats that go up and down the coast. Was your boat a trader boat?" "How do you pay for the cloth? By barter? Do you do everything by barter?" "We give different things in exchange for what they bring. It depends on what we have and what the traders want." Michael smiled uncertainly, his eyes on Callie's face. "Can you read?" Callie's voice was sharp, and she was holding the heavy mug in both hands, squeezing down on it so that her fingertips whitened. "Can anyone read? Have you ever heard of anyone who can read?" "I'm sorry. It has something to do with markings, doesn't it? A trader showed me something once, marks on a piece of plastic. I couldn't see what they meant." Callie took in a deep breath and let it out slowly. "Oh, brave new world that has such people in it," she said. Then she stood up suddenly. "I need to go out, to look at this village of yours." She bent and reached across the table until the tips of her fingers touched Michael's hand. "Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your hospitality. I'm sorry for being rude with you." As she was walking to the door, Michael called after her, "It's cold. Take this." He held a deerskin jacket out to her, his eyes on the jacket rather than Callie. "Your wife's," Callie said. "Thanks. I'll bring it back." "No need," Michael said. But Callie was already out the door, pulling it closed behind her. It was late afternoon when she came back. She knocked on Michael's door, waiting for him to open it this time. "I met the woman, Susan, in the next house down the road," she said. "She took me around, introduced me to lots of people. Everyone was very pleasant, very kind. Susan said I could stay with her until I could support myself, I guess." She walked through the main room of Michael's cabin to the doorway that led to his workshop. "Susan told me that you had an apprentice until recently." "Yes, Alan. He decided to go back to fishing." "A long time ago," Callie said. "A long, long time ago. I used to do some woodworking. Many of the tools were different then, but I was good at it, and I can learn, if you would be willing to teach me." That night, Callie was in Susan's cabin, sitting at her table. "Michael is a good man," Susan said as she put a plate of stew in front of Callie. "You will like working for him. He's very kind, very gentle, and good-looking too, don't you think?" There were gaps in her teeth when she smiled. Sometime through the night, Susan woke up to the sound of Callie quietly crying. She got up and knelt on the floor beside the straw-padded pallet that was Callie's bed, stroking the younger woman's hair. Poor child, she whispered. Callie sat up, wiping under her nose with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry I woke you," she said. Susan made a loose gesture with her hand, sitting down on her heels. "I don't know if I can do this, Susan," Callie said. "I mean, live here, in this village, in this world. I just don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I even want to try." "This world?" Callie brought her knees up underneath the long nightgown that Michael had given her and folded her arms across them. "This isn't my world, Susan. It's changed so much. The world I came from, like all the people I knew, is dead. It died hundreds of years ago." "Michael's wife's name was Emma," Susan said. "She came from another village far away, a place where the crops had failed. Many people died, and others, like Emma, left to find a better place. She was very sad at first. She felt that she had lost everything. But Michael made her happy. He made her laugh." "You have a one-track mind, Susan," Callie said. Susan smiled, her old face looking impish. "You say hundreds of years ago. You don't look like someone who's lived hundreds of years. Do people not grow old where you come from?" "We were on a long journey. The only way to make the journey was to use machines that caused us to sleep for many years without getting older. We're like Michael's wife. We were looking for a faraway place where we could live. We never found it. We only found dead, unlivable places. So finally we gave up and started back. Our ship was deteriorating and couldn't last forever. While we were away, things had changed. Things became very different. She tilted her head and rested it sideways on her folded arms. Things became very different. So, where you come from, the time you were from, it was during the machine times? The machine times? Callie asked. Yes, I suppose that must be what you call it. Tell me what you know about the machine times. Only that it was long ago. People then had giant machines that could do anything. Now the machines no longer work. All we know of them is what we are told by traders who go to the old places, bring back metal and plastics. Callie grunted. And do you know about wars? Wars, Susan repeated, mouthing the word in a way that suggested it was a sound with no meaning. People killing people in large numbers. Furrows deepened in Susan's face. People? Which people? Killing which people? And why? That's a very good question, Susan. Callie lay back down on her side, pulling her blankets up and closing her eyes. Next morning, Callie went to Michael's cabin. He took her to his workshop, and they talked about his work, his tools, different kinds of wood, various items he made, and what he hoped to get for them in trade. They worked together all day until it began to get dark. As Michael was lighting a candle, Callie looked around the cabin. Is that a musical instrument? She asked, putting an object hanging on a wall. Do you play it, or did it belong to your... Yes, I play it sometimes, Michael said. Callie took the instrument off the wall and brought it to Michael. Would you play something for me? Michael sat on a chair near the fire and laid the instrument across his legs like a zither. He plucked at its strings, his right hand moving up and down the fretboard. After a few bars, he began to sing in a soft, dry voice. When he finished the song, Callie asked him to sing another, and another after that. How did you learn these songs? Callie asked. The first one is old. People in the village taught it to me. The other two are mine. I made the last one as a gift for my wife. That one was my favorite, Callie said. She stared into the fire for a time and then turned her face to Michael. I want to talk about some ideas with you, Michael. Sort of an experiment, okay? Michael nodded. She went on. First, do you know that there used to be, ways of marking down music on paper or on animal skins, let's say? You mean like writing? Yes, like that, with different marks for musical notes as well as words. If I write down your songs, you could share your music with everyone. I do share my music with everyone, Michael said. I teach my songs to anyone who asks. What about other people? What about people you might never meet, people far away, people in the future after you're gone? If you wrote your music down, it could last forever. Isn't that a lovely thought? Michael frowned as if struggling to understand. But who are these people? Why would they want to know my songs? An edge came to Callie's voice. Some people would want to. Not everyone, but some people would see them and love them. Can you see the beauty of that idea? Michael started to speak, stopped, started again. It seems strange. Why would I give something to someone I don't know, someone I've never even met, someone who has never asked me for the thing I'm giving? If I could see this person, if he told me he wanted to learn my songs, then I would understand. His voice faded. Callie turned back to the fire. Oh, brave new world, she said quietly. Michael let her sit in silence for a time. He put some dry leaves into a pot of water hanging over the fire and then poured out 2 mugs of tea. Can you tell me something about where you came from? He asked. Callie said nothing for a long time. She continued to look into the fire, blew onto her tea, sipping it a few times. We thought the world was ending, she said finally. There were too many weapons, too many terrible, horrific weapons. It was becoming too easy to destroy too much of the world too quickly. Everything was going to hell when we left. We kept listening to news transmissions as we went out and out. Things only got worse. It looked like the whole world, was going to die. We thought we might be the only survivors. Again, she paused for a long time. And then someone, or something, decided to save the world, and they came up with the virus. The favorite theory on the ship was that it must have been an AI. Some machine was given or gave itself the problem of how to save humanity, and the virus was its solution. Virus? A kind of disease, Michael. A sickness that was created and one that didn't make people sick. Instead, it affected their chromosomes in a way that changed the brains of every new baby that was born, Just a small, small change. The sickness changed people, Michael asked. Is that why people today don't know how to make machines? Did it make us stupid? No, not like that. Didn't change you like that. Callie twisted around to look toward one of the cabin's windows, a square of oiled animal skin that let through some of the dusk's waning light. Are there wolves around here in the forest? Yes. And mountain lions? Big cats? Yes, those too. Wolves live in packs, Callie said, while mountain lions are solitary. People are more like wolves, wouldn't you say? You mean because we live in groups? Yes, I guess so. In my time, we would say that humans are a social animal. The virus changed that. Not very much, just a little. Just a little adjustment. Being social creatures doesn't only mean that we live in groups. It also affects how we think, or rather it used to. That's what changed, Michael. The genetic expression of social instincts have been reduced to the point that those instincts no longer carry over into abstract reasoning. Michael rubbed his chin. I know you don't understand these words, Michael. What they mean is that your people, don't have the concept of belonging to a larger community, a community that includes people you don't know, people who aren't standing in front of you. You can't think of people who are far away as being a part of your social group. Your brain doesn't work that way. You can interact with people who are standing in front of you, but that's all. Your instinct to social behavior doesn't extend beyond that. There was no comprehension in Michael's face, but Callie went on, looking down at the floor, talking more to herself than to him. There was a brilliant purity to the solution. It was probably the least invasive thing, the smallest possible change you could make to human nature and still make war impossible. People are as intelligent, as aggressive, as passionate as there ever were, but they won't make war. Wars happen because people thought in terms of us and them. There was an us that was right, and a them that was wrong, an us that was righteous, and a them that was infidel. So that's what was erased from the human brain. After the virus, the concept of a them was erased. But the concept of us is gone too. Callie sighed and there was a tremble in her breath. And so, now there is no war, and there is no science, no literature, no history, no scholarship, no learning of anything that can't be taught by one person to another face to face. And you will do your woodworking today, and Jim will make his pots, Anne will weave cloth. You all will go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow morning and go to sleep tomorrow night, wake up the next morning and the next and the next and the next, and nothing will ever, ever, ever change. Michael got up and hung his instrument on the wall. Standing looking down at Callie, he said, Things changed, Callie. You came here. You came to my door. That was a change. For me, at least, that was a very great change. Callie and Michael were married in the following spring. In the fall, she gave birth to a daughter. It was not an easy birth, and as Callie gripped Michael's hand in her right and Susan's hand in her left, she shouted out curses against the world, against the village, against Michael and Susan, against herself. When the baby was finally delivered and laid on her belly, she became like all mothers, crying with joy and delight and love for the new life she brought into the world. Years passed. Callie became well-liked by her neighbors. She was known as a woman who worked hard, who knew many strange things, yet was ignorant of many common things, who entertained children with wonderful stories, who seemed to always be haunted by a sadness that she could never share or explain. Her daughter was named Asha. As the girl grew older, Callie began teaching her to make the marks of writing. She also would spend long periods talking to her daughter, asking her questions, challenging her answers, all the time her face taut and intense, perhaps even frightened. One day when Asha was 8, as happened with all mothers and their children, Callie and Asha quarreled. Asha screamed, the angriest of the few angry words she knew, and threw down the slate that Callie had been using for her writing lessons. As Callie bent to pick up the pieces of the slate, tears were already welling in her eyes. That evening she sat sullenly at the table, eating nothing, barely speaking. The virus is still active, she said to Michael after Asha had gone to bed. It infected me, changed my chromosomes. So Asha's brain is butchered just like yours, just like everyone's. Guess I've known it for a long time now. I was hiding it from myself. Our daughter is perfect, Michael said. She's beautiful and smart. She's going to grow up to be a wonderful woman like her mother. Callie glanced up at her husband, her face haggard, her eyes edged with red. No, not like her mother, Michael. For whatever differences that makes. I don't know what I was hoping for anyway. What difference could one child make out of a dozen? And what did I want? A return to the old days, with the world ready to destroy itself? No, Michael, there's nothing of me in your daughter. She's better off that way. Let her be one of you. Let me be the last of an extinct species, a species that failed and died out long ago. Later, as her husband and daughter slept, Callie left the cabin and walked down the road that had first brought her to the village. When she reached the beach, she walked out into the ocean with her clothes on, swam toward the horizon. She swam away from her family, from all the people she had come to know and feel fondness for. She swam away from the peaceful village, the world of harmony and no war, where cups and bowls were made by a potter named Jim, where a woman named Anne wove cloth, where Susan still dispensed her medicines and her advice. Callie was a strong swimmer. She cut cleanly through the breakers and was almost out of sight of land before her strength gave out. Michael did not marry again. He was devoted to his daughter and lavished all his love and attention on her. As she grew older, she would sometimes speak about people in the world outside the village in strange ways, almost as if they were people that she knew. Her father only smiled at this, didn't criticize her for her odd ideas.